Hey guys, my name is Nick and welcome to Watch This Now. The Lodge is a dark psychological horror film about a pair of kids who have to spend Christmas vacation with their father and soon-to-be stepmother deep within the snow-covered wilderness. And these kids are not too happy with their dad for moving on from their mom so fast, and they take it out on his girlfriend. So once they're all stuck in this lodge together and the dad has to leave to go do some work bullshit, the tensions between those remaining in the lodge rise until they spiral out of control. Now, why on earth does any person ever have to leave in the middle of Christmas vacation to go do work? I don't know, but that's the plot of this movie. This movie comes from Austrian filmmakers Severin Fiala and Veronika Franz, who are behind the hit movie Goodnight Mommy, which came out a few years ago and got a whole bunch of attention, but I didn't really care for it. I was not that into Goodnight Mommy, but I was still interested to see what they would do next, and their next film kind of feels like they watched Hereditary and then tried to redo Goodnight Mommy. I mean, not really, but it definitely has a lot of Hereditary in it and quite a bit of what made Goodnight Mommy work for some. So if you like those movies, then I would suggest this, but it's really difficult. This is a tough movie to talk about without getting into spoilers because it's so interesting. I like to go in blind as I did with this one, and so if you're thinking, oh, is there a monster that shows up? Does one of them turn into a murderer? Does a murderer show, like, what happens? What happens in the lodge? It is all psychological horror, and it is all about gaslighting and manipulation and the horrors that exist within one's mind. And I know a lot of people complain about that within horror films. People will say this isn't even a horror movie at all. I completely disagree with that, but I can't really get into those details without ruining the film for you, so I would just say, watch this if you like your horror films to piss you off by the end of it. The Lodge is anchored by a strong performance by Riley Keough, who has a really difficult task of being both a protagonist and an antagonist, because she is supposed to be a little bit mentally unstable, and as we shift gears throughout this film, we just don't know whether we can trust her or not. And Keough does such a good job of making me personally just completely on her side throughout, even though I was questioning, should I be a little more worried of Grace? What is gonna happen? And she ends up pulling it off, and she has some really difficult material to work. And I mean, she just does it. I mean, I've always really liked her. I like Riley Keough. I think she's really good, and this is one of those solid roles where you get to see someone really go for it and show their skill, and I'm just so hoping to see her in so much more after this. Hopefully stuff that is not as tormenting. Jaeden Martell, the kid who is in like all the horror films since It, he plays one of the kids. He is the older brother, and he does a really good job here because his role is to pretty much be an asshole, and you know, teenagers are real good at that. But I have to say, anytime that there is a young actor in a movie and their job is to be an asshole and they still come off as understandable, that's really damn good. One thing that I really appreciate about this film is its direction, because in the beginning of the movie we are in one perspective, we're kind of following the kids and seeing things through their eyes. However, once we get to the lodge, we sort of shift and we're following Grace. And this could be very jarring and it could completely throw you off. I've seen so many movies try to shift perspectives throughout and they just kind of lose me. But I have to give it to the directors here. They pull it off and they make you question whose side you should be on as all of these different twists and turns unfold throughout the film. That, of course, does lead to the biggest problems, because while the direction is solid, the script they're working with definitely needed some tightening and some reworking, I think, before they went into production, because they do so many different things and jump all over the place that they end up building up something in the middle of the film that I thought was really interesting and really wanted to see that played out, but it ultimately amounted to nothing. And this is another point where I could say this might not be your favorite. You might really not get into this because it doesn't have a very clear horror villain or antagonist that you can focus on fighting against. It's a lot of deciding for yourself, and I think a lot of people could be turned off by that. A lot of people want a more straightforward film. I really found this film to be really entertaining just watching the scenarios play out. I mean, watching as many movies as I do, I was really surprised to see this movie about a woman and some kids snowed into a lodge hanging out. I was surprised that it was as entertaining as it was. I was certainly more entertained by this than Brahms the Boy 2. Overall, this film is dark, intense, and loaded with punishing unease. In fact, I went and saw this movie at the movie theater where the ticket taker always seems to have some really interesting comments about the movies I'm going to see. And as I asked for a ticket to the lodge, he was like, "Oh, wow, you glutton of punishment." And I was like, "Great, this movie is going to be wonderful." And he told me that his wife scored this movie -10 stars. But I completely disagree because I guess I am a glutton of punishment and I really enjoyed this movie. I'm gonna give The Lodge a 3.5 out of 5. I think it needed a more cohesive narrative and it needed to have a better structure to it. However, I did like the themes that explored and the psychological horror that exists within our own minds, and what is done in this film I thought was really interesting. I just thought it could have been done quite better. What did you guys think of The Lodge? Let me know in the comments below. This is one that is sure to be divisive. Again, some people are going to say this isn't even a horror film, and I want to make a video just on that alone, just explaining what horror is, because horror can be a lot of damn things, and this is 100% a horror film, even if it isn't your favorite. But let me know what you thought in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I greatly appreciate it, as always. Don't forget to like, share it with your friends, subscribe to watch this now, because, you know, you're probably going to be quarantined soon, and I've got stuff for you to binge, so win-win.